Summary of The Manipulative Man. Identify his behavior, counter the abuse, regain control. By Dorothy McCoy. Mama's boys, and other manipulators. Women often feel drawn to dangerous men, those who exude confidence and, upon occasion, reveal the wounded boy inside. Perhaps they believe that unconditional love is just what these men need to straighten out their lives. However, the boyishly charming man you want to rescue is counting on this impulse. He might well be manipulating you. Some manipulators are just a bit needy. Others actually have recognized personality disorders. The degree to which your man exhibits several character traits will determine if change is possible in your relationship. According to Freud, the natural process of acculturation can be interrupted, and instead of succumbing to the pressure to become one of the boys, a man can retain his mother as his primary source of self-identification. Instead of growing up, these mama's boys rely on mom or other mother figures in their lives to make all their decisions for them. Look at Janice and Larson's relationship. Janice, an attorney, rushes home nightly to prepare dinner for him. He spends his day, supposedly, searching for a job. According to Larson and his mother, no opportunities suit his amazing skills. Larson uses several manipulation ploys to make Janice feel at fault. Ganging up, he and his mother agree on their version of reality. Blaming, he rejects responsibility for any part of the predicament. Manipulating the truth, he says he's looking for work harder than he really is. Exploiting emotions, he uses Janice's sympathy for his job search against her. Passive aggression, his excuses imply blame, such as, "You never said." Whining, he complains about his hardship and characterizes you as shrewish. Outing these manipulative behaviors helps, but it's best to write a contract, enumerating the responsibilities you each will assume. To create a more equitable relationship, approach your complaint with an open mind, ready to hear his side of the story and willing to forgive. However, don't be a pushover. Instead of yielding to excuses, look for signs of real change. Do what you say you will do in the face of his manipulative behavior. Be consistent. Do not take the blame bait. You have 3 options in any relationship: accept things as they are, but learn to cope better, change the way things are, which requires his involvement, or decide to leave. The workaholic. A workaholic is his work. His entire identity is wrapped up in what he does and, perhaps, what he has achieved. A workaholic has no time for interests, vacations, or relatives and relationships. His life is work-centric. His friends are workmates, and he arrives late to or misses events completely due to work. He diminishes the importance of other people's needs. Therapy can help couples find a balance. However, getting workaholics to participate can prove difficult. Charles and Karen are both successful at their jobs. Karen maintains outside interests, while Charles steadily devotes more and more time to his work. As a result, they spend less time together. When Karen calls Charles to tell him to come home, he says she's interrupting him. He denies his hours at work are a problem. His behavior patterns. Throwing tantrums, essentially telling Karen to leave him alone, and avoiding the problem, which also means blaming Karen for imagining it all, keep them from finding viable solutions. Establish better communication with workaholics by presenting your issues clearly and logically. Elicit his position. Then spend some time generating potential options until you reach a solution that appeals and feels fair to both of you. Show him that you appreciate all he does, don't make it just about what he doesn't do. Rewarding good behavior is vital. The eternal jock. Jocks are likable. They usually are fun to be around, have lots of friends and are in good shape. Eternal jocks are stuck in their glory days and are not interested in moving out of the limelight. Often they are hard to pry away from the TV. Plus, the imperative to win no matter what can translate into an overly aggressive style, looser ethics and problems with impulse control. Jocks are not very good at perceiving others' problems. They use a variety of manipulation techniques including intimidation, especially verbal aggression, and blaming, since jocks learn that best defense is a good offense. Explain what behavior you need him to change. Choose something important, don't fight about everything. Spell out your alternative for him, the way you would like him to treat you. If he continues to disregard your needs, decide on a consequence and be prepared to follow through. Write out the specifics. For instance, ask that he spend more nights a week with you. If he doesn't, let him know he can't count on you to be available, either. Don't expect all the behaviors that annoy you or hurt your feelings to change at once. Start small, one at a time. Help him see how his change will help the home team. There are many positives in sports, for instance, the admiration of excellence. Draw his attention to what it means to be excellent as a parent or husband. He will understand the value of group effort. He will appreciate loyalty and be open to coaching. Keep these in mind when framing your requests. The dependent man. Those with dependent personality disorders take desirable personality traits, such as asking your advice, to an extreme. They cannot make a decision without you. In fact, in acute cases, the dependent man can't accept responsibility for anything. He will have constant problems that he wants to hand to you. If he's the dependent woe is me type, he'll do whatever he can to avoid conflict. He'll underachieve and avoid criticism. If he's the egotistical woe is me type, he'll be self-absorbed, imperious and rather cold. Sometimes dependent types are masking deep hostility. He will resent whenever he doesn't have your undivided attention. If his fragile ego feels threatened, he will lash out in anger. Stephanie went from a relationship with a controlling man into a relationship with Rich, a perennially underemployed dependent type with low self-esteem. He blamed her for not working hard enough on their relationship. He exploited Stephanie's emotions by telling her he couldn't get along alone, depending on her sense of guilt to keep her tied to him. In effect, he wanted Stephanie to take responsibility for managing his life. To improve your relationship with a dependent man, be specific about what actions you want him to take. Instead of asking him to be more self-reliant, ask him to call you no more than twice a day when you're working. Let him know you expect his help. The antisocial. Some manipulative types, like the antisocial, are less open to change. He's an exciting daredevil loaded with charm. He'll tell you what you want to hear, rather than the truth. The antisocial type especially appeals to his female thrill-seeking counterpart, or the unwitting, nurturing type. Often it's not too long before these manipulators are in trouble with the law. Antisocials are self-absorbed, prone to angry outbursts and ill-equipped to love. Though exciting, they are incapable of handling responsibilities. They are adept at creating a false sense of romance and closeness. Antisocial types often hang together in groups. They assume that everyone else is as predatory as they are. So if you think you've finally found Mr. Exciting to sweep you off your feet, think again. When you wake up from that dream, the reality will be a nightmare. There is no sweet, cuddly boy inside the man, it's a facade. In extreme cases, you are simply a resource for him. Consider how you will protect yourself. The passive-aggressive man. The passive-aggressive man is quietly angry. It's harder to pinpoint hostile behavior because it's covert, there's no yelling or throwing things, but he's expert at manipulation and guilt. Take David and Susan, married a dozen years with 2 kids. David has a habit of discounting whatever Susan says. He rarely keeps promises and sulks if she tries to confront him about these things. His response is to make Susan feel she's wronged him and that she's to blame for their problems. Often passive aggression accompanies atypical depression, which includes up moods when things are going well. Cognitive behavioral therapy is helpful in making people conscious of their thinking patterns and is especially useful in couples therapy. Be reasonable in your requests about what you want him to change. Be specific. Instead of criticizing, frame your wishes in terms of how his actions affect you. Realize that your complaint is about what he does, not who he is. Be open to accepting responsibility. Don't withdraw from your mate, that stalls progress. If these behaviors come up, postpone your discussion. If there is never a good time, think about moving on. Beware of these manipulative males, too. The womanizer and the player, the womanizer makes a sport of conquest and has little respect for women, while the player keeps looking for their own self-esteem in new relationships. Both are addicted to the chase. Usually good-looking, often well-educated, womanizers and players are great at short-term intense relationships, but are insincere. They do not value long-term commitments, but maybe that could change with counseling. Therapy might give insight into their motivations, which might lead to real change. Your relationship can survive an infidelity if you're both committed to it, but serial affairs indicate a more serious and persistent problem. The narcissists are rare. They seek adulation and will do anything to get it. They completely lack empathy. They are the stars in the show, everyone else has a supporting role. They are obsessed with their looks and do not age gracefully. Their main motivation is to maintain their fantasy world of success. The only way to negotiate relationship issues is to frame them as having positive benefits for the narcissist. He will respond to praise. He will most value how the changes you ask him for will enhance his social standing and make him more esteemed. Avoid criticism. The psychopath, outwardly charming and self-possessed, psychopaths look attractive. However, they are emotionally shallow and have no conscience. Exploitation is second nature to them. They are quite capable of criminal activity. Frame your wish for behavior change so he sees how it's in his best interest. Employ logical consequences for his bad behavior based on what's important to him. Start with a small change and see how that goes. He will want to blame you for his reactions. Do not accept that. The violent manipulator, some manipulation goes beyond the emotional into the physical realm. Intimidation is the primary tool of the violent manipulator. He is unpredictable, he will not change. If you were on the receiving end of aggressive behavior during childhood, you'll accept it more easily as an adult. Abusers do not perceive your behavior accurately. Typically they fall into two categories, those who let anger build up until they lash out, or those who react immediately. Either way, that's no good for you. If you are in a situation with a violent manipulator, your main concerns are avoiding physical harm and seeking independence. If you live in fear of triggering his temper, it's time to create a plan to leave the relationship. The truth is always consistent. If you find yourself attracted to manipulative types, ask yourself why. Write what qualities attract you to a man, then list characteristics you want in a mate when considering a long-term relationship. Contemplate the differences between the lists. Respect, trust, and honesty form the basis of a healthy marriage. If you want more affection in your marriage, frame it within a specific request, such as cuddling when watching TV. Practice clear communication by repeating what you've heard your mate say to affirm that you are getting his intended message. This avoids misunderstanding. Work on your own positive attitude.